What happens if you don't vaccinate your kid? What is life like? Do you know, can you enroll your kid in school? Are you bound to homeschool them for the rest of their lives or, their childhood? Are you able to, I mean, what can you, how do parents navigate that if they make the choice not to vaccinate?
So I highly recommend a film that's free on our website, childrenshealthdefense.org, under the tab CHD-TV. Watch Vax 2, and it interviews families who had vaccine injuries, and it interviews many, many families with unvaccinated children. It's eye-opening for many people. In 45 states right now, religious or philosophical or both, exemptions exist to vaccines. So in 45 states in the country, you can send your kid to school with a religious exemption with absolutely no consequences. There's nothing that your child will be prohibited from doing. In 5 states, sadly, California and New York, where we are among them, there is no right to a religious exemption. And unfortunately, the medical community, in conjunction with the pharmaceutical industry, has really effectively restricted medical exemptions to almost nothing, which is appalling, Kim. In 1905, the US Supreme Court in Jacobson versus Massachusetts said you have to have medical exemptions for people who are vulnerable to injuries to vaccines. They knew in 1905 that there could be injuries from vaccines and deaths from vaccines. And basically, these medical exemptions have been whittled down to nothing, and that has to be turned around. So, and again, as I point out, this Kennedy Hooker book, Vax, Unvax, Let the Science Speak, it shows that in every category, the unvaccinated children are the healthiest. They're not going to the doctor. They don't have asthma. They don't have allergies. They don't have allergic rhinitis, runny nose at the same. They don't have autism. They don't have ADHD. They don't have diabetes in any way the same level as children who've been vaccinated. They do have problems. They do have, they occasionally have medical problems. Sometimes they can be severe, but it's not the same. They have intact immune systems, if you will.
Yeah. So basically, those of us that are in New York and California, we have no choice but to vaccinate our kids. Otherwise, what
Well,
happens?
you do have to then homeschool your children in New York and California at this point. And I have to say, the world of homeschooling blossomed during COVID because the restrictions in schools, first of all, the schools closed, but the restrictions were so onerous in so many places. And I'm really happy to say, with the world of online learning, there's some incredible options out there of combining curricula, some phenomenal curricula, and then play groups for your kids, sports for your kids. The world of homeschooling is radically different than it was 25 years ago. It's a very rich world, and there's some fantastic, especially in California, there can be charter schools that have some unvaccinated kids. There are sort of de facto groups of families in New York and California, and the repressive states on this, Maine and Connecticut in particular, and still West Virginia, they've got a little bit of an opt out, but those are the 5 states that still have no religious exemption, and that's got to change.
Yeah. Yeah. Which religion would it be that lets you, what do
So
you have to claim?
So I should say that religious or philosophical. So you don't have to assert any religious belief. That is religious discrimination and violation of the First Amendment. You can say,
Mhm.
I believe in Santa Claus. And if that's your God and that is your genuine, sincere belief, and if it's a genuine and sincere belief, that is your religion. And many different beliefs, many different traditions have ideas that are consistent with us. Certainly people who are Christian, Hindu, Buddhist, you name it, Jewish, can assert religious exemptions. Now, that's not the dogma of the Catholic Church. It's not the dogma
Right.
of these institutional religions. It's more the dogma of Christian Scientists and Jehovah's Witnesses, that they do not believe in contamination of the blood. They do not believe in vaccination. But you can be any denomination and assert, this is my religious belief. I do not want this for my child. I believe in my child. I am responsible for my child's upbringing, and this is my religious conviction that I hold above all else. I hold this in a place that is sacred.
Yeah. I'm surprised California doesn't have a religious exemption, considering we have all these Scientologists here who are really powerful and rich. And, maybe they would be like, hey, wait a minute. We don't
Well,
want any of these vaccines. And
so I don't, you might not have been, we can come back to this sometime if you want. The history is very interesting. You may remember that there was the Disneyland measles outbreak, which led to the
uh,
repeal of the personal belief exemption in California. So California had a very open exemption to vaccination. You didn't have to assert any kind of religious belief. And then it went to the legislature in California after the Disneyland outbreak in 2015. I came out and testified to the Judiciary Committee. There were thousands of people who lined up from all over California to testify. And it was knocked down, drag out. It was a really tough fight, but it passed. And thousands and thousands of people have left California as a result. I can't begin to tell you how many people on my staff left California and now live in
mhm.
Idaho, or now live in South Carolina, or now live in a state that is freer on these issues.
Yeah. I'm from Idaho. That's where I should be moving back to. That's where I was born and raised, and had a great, wonderful childhood there. And I still go there a lot to visit my family. But what was it that caused that measles outbreak? I mean, they're claiming that it was these unvaccinated people. What was it
Well,
really?
that's a really great question, Kim. I think that I'd love to see a really thorough new investigation of what happened at Disney. Interestingly, the scientific literature of the day showed that about a third of those cases were measles vaccine strain of measles. So a third of those cases were caused by the vaccine itself. Why the outbreak started in Disneyland, I don't know. Allegedly, it was a strain that was prevalent in places like the Philippines. I don't know. I don't know. But listen, measles is highly contagious. There's no question about that. Nobody died, Kim. Nobody died. But
Right,
that
right.
that was just front page news every day, and it was used to um, engineer this retraction of the exemption in California. It was then used. There was a measles outbreak in New York, in Brooklyn, and in Rockland County, in an ultra Orthodox religious community, that was used to bludgeon the New York State legislature to get rid of the religious exemption in 2019. That playbook hasn't been used since with measles, but it was used successfully twice.
So what if we get measles? I mean, I don't, I had the measles.
Well, that's
I'm
the
fine.
thing, Kim. I'm old enough. I certainly had measles. All my siblings had measles, and there's a lot of good evidence that when you have actually resolved these childhood diseases, measles, mumps, rubella, chickenpox in particular, you have a strengthened immune system, sort of like a use it or
Yeah,
lose it. When your body has resolved these things, you actually do typically get lifelong immunity, which is much safer for herd immunity than these vaccines that do not confer lifelong herd immunity.
right. So in the UK, they don't recommend the chickenpox vaccine, right? That's what from my understanding, they don't recommend it. So the kids there still get the chickenpox. I got a lot of nieces and nephews. I haven't seen a single one of them get chickenpox. I don't know I mean, I don't think chickenpox exists here in the United States anymore. I wouldn't want to vaccinate my kid with the chickenpox vaccine because of the issues the UK brings up, that it makes you more susceptible to shingles later on. So then how would I get my kids chickenpox? So if I say, okay, I don't want them to get the vaccine, when I was a kid, we had chickenpox parties. There's
Parties,
nobody to
sure.
have a chickenpox party anymore with because none of the kids are getting chickenpox. So what do? Do you go to
Okay,
the
so
UK and you find a chickenpox party?
there are chickenpox parties. One of the amazing things, and I think that the chickenpox vaccine is mandated in many states. It's mandated in New York State now. It probably is in California. I don't know offhand. And so that has led to a lessening of chickenpox in children, but it absolutely has led to an explosion of shingles, which is much more serious than chickenpox.
Yeah.
One of the things that's amazing about children's healthy immune systems is they can come in contact with some kind of viral or bacterial infection, show absolutely no symptoms, and their antibodies will show that they've already resolved this. So that happened for kids. Over 90% of kids, they resolved COVID with no symptoms. So you might be
Yeah.
surprised to find, if you were to do titer tests on a healthy kid that never had chickenpox, they actually have antibodies to chickenpox. You might be very surprised to learn that. I don't think you have to Chickenpox is not a disease in childhood that one needs to worry about. It's just not a very serious disease. And they were very clear about that when they put the vaccine on the schedule. If you can believe this, the narrative around putting the chickenpox on the recommended federal schedule was, well, it's going to prevent moms from having to take days off of work. That was literally their explanation for why they wanted to mandate the chickenpox vaccine.
Oh. That reminds me during COVID, a lot of the people I always identified, now I don't anymore, but I used to identify at that point as like a progressive on the progressive left. And the funny thing about that was that all of these other progressives, they're always talking about, against the working people too hard and we need more workers' rights and we need, whatever. But then when it came to COVID, they were like, well, you have to get the vaccine because otherwise you're going to take yeah, okay, maybe it doesn't stop the spread. Once they got over it doesn't stop the spread, they started saying things like, but you won't get sick and that's better for the workforce. And I was like, you guys have lost it completely. I mean, not only are you now advocating for people to go and get this shot, but now you're making the excuse and saying, well, you won't miss work. A bunch of
Well, and
progressives, who are basically
I know,
communists at that point.
the authoritarian left really triumphed during COVID. This idea
Oh,
that
it
that
did.
we want choice for our own bodies, particularly on reproductive rights, but we
Yeah.
don't want you to have a choice. Even when they understood that this shot, it's not a vaccine, this gene therapy doesn't stop transmission. That's just pure authoritarianism at best. So COVID was such a strange time. I mean, the way that the political lines were sort of skewed was just astonishing, really.
I think in a way it was good. I mean, it was terrible when it happened. It was terrible, but in a way it was good in that it did open the eyes for a lot of people about, I mean, for me, for sure, the pharmaceutical industry, even the science industry with, studies that have come out or even research and, all of these types of things. It made us really question a lot of that. But another thing, that group, that authoritarian group, they're now changing their tune. There's a lot of them who I know who were really staunch pro get the shot or I'm not coming around to your event, get the shot or we're not going to, I'm isolating myself away from you. They're now saying, well, I see now, that didn't work. It wasn't right. I mean, even though we're not getting like the big apology, a lot of things aren't going to correct from what happened during that time. At least those people now, I do think that if another pandemic came around, this I think not only those of us that were already staunchly against all of this stuff, I think we'll be joined by another, at least a third of the group that was for all of it. Because now they're going to say, wait a minute, we did this once before. It didn't work. I don't trust this. They're telling me that this will stop the spread, but it didn't last time. I still got COVID 5 times after getting 5 shots. So I think it did make some change and it maybe has made more people. I even know in my own family, people who are really, really strict for get the vaccine or else. And even they're now starting to question other vaccines, I mean, which they've never done before. And they were certainly in the authoritarian crowd of COVID. And now they're like, well, I don't know.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, COVID opened people's eyes, and let's
Yeah.
pray that it continues to open people's eyes about this whole pandemic preparedness. I am personally quite concerned about all the hype right now about bird flu. There is a vaccine in the waiting. The federal government has put hundreds of millions of dollars into it. We just had the first death, allegedly, of somebody who'd contracted bird flu from birds in the backyard. So this is not over. Billions of dollars have been put into this pandemic preparedness paradigm. And as you know, we were fighting over the past summer, this World Health Organization treaty that would have really moved tremendous level of decision making about pandemics and other crises outside the United States to a kind of global
Yeah.
entity. So I think we're seeing real change, but the threats are not gone to bodily autonomy and to democracy, frankly.
I try to eat healthy, but I'm human. Sometimes I fall off the wagon. I certainly did over the holidays, gained a few pounds, not going to lie, but because I ate some cinnamon rolls and cookies and candy, but it happens. Even when my diet isn't perfect, Field of Greens keeps me on track. What's the point of a green drink or supplement if you're not 100% confident they actually will improve your health? That's what makes Field of Greens radically different. Here's the deal. Field of Greens promises better health. Enjoy a delicious glass every day, and at your next checkup, your doctor will notice the difference or you'll get your money back. How can they make this promise? Simple. Every fruit and vegetable in Field of Greens is doctor selected for specific health benefits, heart health, lungs and kidneys, metabolism, even healthy weight. Field of Greens has you covered. I love the energy boost I get, and I know I'm doing something great for my body and my health. So if you're ready to start, I've got a great discount for you. Use code KIM at fieldofgreens.com. That's code KIM at fieldofgreens.com. I personally love the lemon lime flavor, but there's a few other different flavors there. So go to fieldofgreens.com, use that code Kim, start your year off right with Field of Greens. Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iverson Show. If you want to watch the full show, visit KimIversonShow.com. The show airs every Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Again, it's KimIversonShow.com. See you there.